so you're only taxed at 110. And that is going to follow through to year C, D, E, and F, and continue on with savings. But there's more savings that the homestead exemption does for you. School taxes, it helps you with your school taxes. The school districts will, some school districts will lower your property taxable value by $25,000. And there's other additional jurisdictions that you're taxed on. You know, you have the River Authority, you have the different cities. Maybe you're not in city of San Antonio, but you're in Castle Hills Forest or Alamo Heights. I know that doesn't involve anybody here in the Northeast, but you know what I'm saying. These different cities also have the different types of exemptions as well. Now, the different lines of exemptions that most of the people are really recognize is, of course, the general homestead exemption, which is the 10% cap on your taxable value. If you're over the age of 65, you get the senior freeze. And so one thing that I want to let senior citizens know, that not all your property taxes is frozen. So the River Authority and the University Health System does not freeze. So your taxes will go up little by little every year. Now, if you're a higher income earner, you're not probably going to notice it, but if you're an individual that survived off of Social Security only, then you're going to feel it because your taxes are probably going to be going up $50 to $100 extra a year. Then we have our disabled veterans exemption. So if you're 100% permanently disabled veteran, you don't have to pay property taxes. But if you don't have 100%, there are still savings for you as well. So if you're a disabled veteran with a VA rating, you should apply for additional homestead exemptions. As well as disabled persons. Not a lot of people know that there's disabled veterans, they're the senior, but there's also disabled persons. So if you are receiving a disability from Social Security, there is exemptions out there as well for you to help you save on your property taxes as well. And for surviving spouses, if you're a surviving spouse, the exemption will also apply for you. So let's say your spouse is 70 years old and you're 63 and they pass away, well, their senior freeze would pass on to you as long as you still live in that home and are unmarried. So still trying to keep you together. All right. This is the homestead exemption. Now, we have a website, mycityismyhome.com, on our ECHO page. It has a video showing you step by step on how to fill this out. Neighborhood association presidents and community leaders, you guys can do this for your neighbors. So if you can do outreach to your neighborhoods, identify the homeowners that doesn't have their homestead exemption, and you can help them fill out this piece of paper. All you need is their signature and a picture of their photo ID, and you can turn this in for them. So a lot of senior citizens are having issues with filling this stuff out. Maybe they think it's already automatic. Maybe they have their homestead exemption and never got their senior freeze. Well, you can help them fill out this paperwork. You can check on bcad.org, that's bcad.org, to find your homestead exemption. And on our website, we have a little YouTube video that shows you step by step on how to use this website. So again, how the ECHO project works is if you guys are interested in identifying the homeowners in your area that doesn't have their homestead exemption, again, we will map out that entire area and identify the homeowners that we believe should qualify for the homestead exemption. Sometimes, what we're doing here is we're pulling up Bexar County data records and we're identifying the mailing address as the same as the physical address, and the owner has 100% ownership. More or less, if you have the primary address is the same as your mailing address, the homeowner probably lives in that address. That's not always the case. We find 25% of the time they're renting the property as well, so of course they wouldn't get the homestead exemption. But nonetheless, this gives you an opportunity to reach out to your neighbors. And that's what I was going to say about our lessons learned, about going out there, and not everybody that we're identifying has it. They're like renters or so on and so forth, so we like to identify that stuff. So if you're interested in having this information and sharing that with your neighborhoods, what we can do is you give us a call. You can save this number because it's going to run through for the rest of the presentation. 210-951-0951, and that's going to help get you to the resources that you are needing help with. What else are we finding with these homestead exemptions? So homeowners are having issues with applying for this because they have title issues. So multiple owners, somebody passed away, they didn't have a will, and so now it's owned by multiple people, yet one sibling lives in the property, and so they need help to fixing that stuff. We're working with UTSA, and UTSA is going to help out with that effort of fixing those title issues and doing the affidavit of heirship, so on and so forth. What we're also trying to make everybody realize is that there's more that you can do besides setting up a will. You can set up what's called a TOD, a transfer on death deed. What that means is that you don't have to wait until probate to get your property. Upon the person's passing, if they had a TOD set up with your name on it, it automatically transfers ownership. Once that death decree is at the courthouse, boom, it's done. That person now owns the property. She's nodding her head over there, so maybe I don't have the exact specifics, but that's what a TOD basically does. You put your heir onto the TOD, it gets filed in, and upon the passing, it automatically goes to the heir without having to go through probate. That's the most important thing right there, is being able to pass your property to your heirs without having to go through probate. And again, that's what UTSA is helping us put together. Again, 210-951-0951. Protesting your property taxes. So that's where my nonprofit really kicks into gear. It's My City is My Home. We've protested over 1,000 homeowners' property taxes. We've saved over $14 million in lowered valuations for free. We do this all. In the past, we've been doing this by getting volunteers, real estate agents. So that's what My City is My Home is doing. We gather real estate agents from different brokerages. Doesn't matter where they're from. We train them on how to protest property taxes. But what we found in the past is what we're trying to do is match you up with a real estate agent that will help you throughout the process. But what we're finding is that in April you get your notice to protest. In May 15th you have to turn in your notice to protest, but then you don't get your protesting date until June or July or October, right? And so your volunteer has moved on with their real estate life, and so when you're contacting them back about protesting, we found a lot of miscommunication. So we're working with an organization that will go through and help you throughout the entire process. So if you're low income, if you make less than $3,000 a month and your home is worth $185,000 or less, we're going to have Protest Tax, a company that's working with us, do your entire protesting for free. From start to finish, you don't even have to turn in the notice to protest. You sign up with us and we're going to take care of your property taxes from start to finish, and you didn't have to leave your door or talk to Bexar County Appraisal District at all. Now, if you're over that much amount of money, Protest Tax and Home Tax Shield or other partners would still love to get your business. So we have those links as well to connect you with that information. They do charge, they're not free, but they do donate to us. So if you guys are still in the market for having somebody do your property taxes, we can definitely connect you with those resources. April is when you're going to get your notice to protest. May 15th is when you need to decide whether or not you're going to protest. And again, if you decide that you want to use our services, you do not need to turn in that notice to protest. You just sign up with us and we'll take care of the rest from there. And the last thing I want to leave with you is Sacred.org. Sacred is a nonprofit that maps out nonprofits. So everybody in this, if you're a neighborhood leader, you should have this saved, starred in your website, or your contact information, because if you run into somebody that needs help with shelter, food, utility assistance, transportation, childcare, Sacred is a nonprofit that maps out nonprofits for you, gets you all that information as well so you can help out your community. Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate you guys' time.
Let's give a hand, everybody. There you go. Any questions? Any questions anybody has for Rich?
Yes.
Okay, over here, go ahead.
Is a TOD the same thing as...
Speak up.
Is a TOD the same thing that we know of as a labor deed?
No, it's not.
Okay.
What was the question, sir?
The Ladybird deed. So that's I don't know the actual form that's needed in order to do something like that, but it's not the same thing.
Okay.
Todd is, again, Todd is who's a lawyer in here that knows exactly what I'm talking about? Because UTSA has a lawyer that helps me out with this. Matt.
A TOD is something that's done by statute. The legislature created that. Lady Bird deed is a deed that's by equity. It was something it's not under statute. So they're not the same exact things. Just to expand a little bit on the TOD, when a person passes, when you have a TOD, and it has to be recorded in the deed records before the person's death. And upon the person's death, you actually have to record an affidavit of death in the deed records in order for the TOD to take effect. If you don't record that affidavit of death after the person's death, it won't take effect. So it won't actually trigger the new person's ownership.
But they don't have to wait for probate.
It avoids probate altogether, which is a great thing.
Very good.
Excellent.
Okay, anybody else? All right, one more, go ahead.
How long have we had the general exemption? How long have we had that? Did that come into effect in 2019 or just this year?
No, the homestead exemption's been around for many years and decades. Yes. Now they've added, Councilman Perry has added additional homestead exemptions, so thank you very much for Councilman Perry and his work doing that. But they've added more exemptions to the homestead exemption. But when you apply for the homestead exemption, you don't have to keep reapplying for it. You apply for it once and it stays with your property as long as you stay with the property. This is something that I'm glad you pointed that out, because there's something that I didn't include into this. Protesting your property taxes with your homestead exemption, senior citizens and disabled veterans. I'm a disabled veteran and I still protest my property taxes because the exemption stays with you, not with your property. So as soon as you are no longer with us and you pass that property to an heir that's not your spouse, those exemptions go away, and now your family's going to be paying off of that property tax valuation that you haven't been protesting all these years. So that's why it's important. But to let you know, if you've owned your property in the last decade and you haven't applied for your homestead exemption, you definitely should go ahead. And I'll be in the back if you want to check. If you want me to, I'll go online real quick for you and I'll look at your property and I'll tell you whether or not you have your homestead exemptions, or if you want to point out a neighbor, I have no problem doing that.
Very
for you.
good, Rich, that's great. Let's give him a hand, everybody. Got you something there.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, here's one I've really been looking forward to now, our next briefing. But before she shows up at the podium, I want to ask, has anybody here voted yet? Okay, Elaine, I think you know you're talking to the choir. We hear from the League of Women Voters, Elaine Lindley. She is the chairman of the Community Outreach Committee. Come on down.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting us to come and share some information about our organization and the work that we do. The League of Women Voters of the San Antonio area has been around since 1940. It followed the development of the state organization, which is now celebrating its 103rd year. So a little younger than the state, but still very active in efforts to support voters. The vision of the League of Women Voters in the San Antonio area, they envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate in the political process. And I think that last one has always struck me, the confidence to participate. I think that's something that we need to work on to give people the ability to exercise their right with a lot of confidence that that's what should be happening. Their mission is to encourage informed and active participation in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, as well as to influence public policy through advocacy. So they do, our work in the community outreach is mainly on that first bullet, encouraging informed and active participation in government. It is very important to note, though, that it is a nonpartisan organization. The League does not support any candidate, nor does it oppose any candidate or any political party. So it is all of our materials are intended to be nonpartisan. We're very adamant about that. The voter's guide, I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. Many of you have recognized it. I had a few on the table. This is my last one. And it's promised to somebody already, sorry. The candidate information in here is in the candidate words. We do not edit their wording to the questions that they answer for this publication. So it is based on what they say, not what we say about them. And that's just a very important aspect of the work that we do. The Community Outreach Program Committee and the Voter Services Committee contribute to the vision and the mission of the organization by assisting voters in these 3 ways. The very first way, of course, is getting them to register to vote, or helping them find out if their registration status is current and accurate. So we have resources that we can suggest to be able to do that. The second thing is making sure that voters are informed and they have accurate and timely information about their ballot and about the candidates that are running for the different races. And then the third one, of course, is making a plan, providing information on the where and when to vote so that they have access to the voting process. Share with you some of our educational resources that we have. Of course, the Voter's Guide. This is the most, I think, well-known. It's been around for so many years. It is now currently online as well as in paper copy. Like I said, I have one left with me today because we've distributed the majority of our Voter's Guides to public libraries around the city. So if you did not get one from me tonight and you want the hard copy, just go visit your public library and they should have one. This contains, again, the candidate responses to the questions, not our responses or our interpretation of what they said. The second major resource that is election specific is vote411.org, and this is the Voter's Guide Plus. It has the voter guide at 411.org, but it also has a way for a voter to go in there and to put in their address and then actually get a printout of what their ballot is going to look like, so that they know when they go into the ballot box exactly which races they're going to see, which representative district there are, which judicial districts are going to be involved, which Board of Education one. So, and they can compare the candidates side by side on this site. So if you don't have the hard copy of the Voter's Guide, this is the next place to go. We also have a number of other resources that are available to voters. These are all on our website. These are documents that we've created. Voting information for college students, the Texas Voters Bill of Rights, which is also in our Voter's Guide, the frequently asked questions about voting in elections, and then we also have recorded webinars and videos to help support voters in understanding the process and what they're supposed to be doing to be able to access that. This one is a webinar that we actually hosted last week, so it should be up today or tomorrow on the website. If you go home and look tonight and it's not there, please note it might be tomorrow. The third piece of it is making a plan to vote. And even with as many opportunities as we have mail-in voting, we have early voting, we have election day, you still have to make a plan because it can get away from you. Election day is really the deadline for voting. And so thinking about it that way, that's your last opportunity to be able to exercise your right to vote. The vote by mail, I put this document up here. This is a response, the league response to Senate Bill 1, an attempt to help clarify some of the confusing information about the new process, the mail-in ballot process. So we tried to clarify that, put it all in one sheet. This is actually, I know it's too late to apply for voting for the March 1st primary elections because that date is passed, that was last Friday. But we have 3 more elections in this year. So there's the May 7th election, there's the May 24th primary runoffs, and there's the November general election. Each one of those elections has a deadline for submitting an application to vote by mail. So this resource is going to be good for the entire year. I have extra copies if you have community members that you can share this with if they were unable to get the voting by mail taken care of in this election round. We'd be more than happy to share some of these with you and help you help us distribute this to other people who may need this information to help alleviate some of that confusion. On the early voting, we want to make sure that people know where and when to vote. So we give them information about polling places and that's on in our voter's guide, and we also provide websites and phone numbers that they can call to get the actual information. Other things that the League does, we have lots of events that support our work by highlighting the advocacy that we do, by highlighting the efforts that we do to support voters. We're having our first ever 5K run on March 20th, so that's something if you want to participate in that to support the League. This last year we had a youth initiative. We started a specialized group that is really focusing on getting our youth engaged in the political process. This is the flyer from last fall. We had an essay, poetry, rap contest with the topic, what is your vision of a democratic society and what is your role within that society? Our winners are actually published in our voter's guide, so you can see the 2 essays and the 1 poem that won. We had a high school winner, a college winner, and a graduate student winner. And then of course, the webinar that I mentioned, Informed Voters, Fair Judges. This was last week. We talked about the judicial branch, the importance of having fair and impartial judiciary, learning how to evaluate judges on the ballot since we do elect our judges here in Texas, and then things that distinguish the judicial branch from others. We have 2 very distinguished presenters, Judge Norma Gonzalez and Jane Bacchus. It's an excellent webinar. Again, it's going to be posted on our website so that you can go back and look at that. So more than just voter registration drives, we want to make sure voters have the right information to vote in forms, and we want to make sure that they get to the ballot box and actually exercise their right to vote. If you want to know more about the work of the League, you can go to this QR code and fill out a form and tell us what you want to know more about, and we'll be glad to get back in touch with you and give you that information. Also on that site is a spot. If you have an organization that would like us to come out, do a voter registration drive, have a voter outreach event, give us that information and we'll get in touch with you, and we'd love to schedule that so that we have an opportunity to talk to more voters. Okay. Any questions for me?
And this is all on lwvsa.org?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, let's see, we got some questions. Go ahead, Jim.
What's the major source of your funding?
Donations and membership.
Very good.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
How long does it take to get an absentee ballot?
I got mine in about 3 weeks. I think the first ones were delayed a little bit.
We don't have one yet.
I believe it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my husband is very ill, and he wanted to vote by mail. The first thing ballot he got didn't ask for all the information that was the new law. But he didn't know that, we didn't know that, we filled it all out, sent it in, and they waited a few weeks and they sent it back, okay? Then we filled out another one, okay, and we sent that one in, and we haven't heard anything.
There is a spot, a website you can go to check the status of that. Or you can call the Bexar County Elections Office to find out the status. That's actually what I would suggest.
Yeah, if you can get someone to answer the phone, that sounds great.
There is a site, and it's actually on this handout. If you'll pick up one of these, there's a site you can go to and you can actually check where it is in the process.
The tracker.
Sorry?
The tracker.
A tracker, yeah, called the tracker. So you can go there and see. It has been a very confusing time. A lot of the things that they were supposed to have in place to make it work weren't in place when they.
Are they gonna catch up where everybody gets to vote and is eligible?
You can call that number of the county and ask them. I don't work for the county.
Okay, we got time for one more. Anybody else? Okay, let's give Billy a great big hand. important, and I'll tell you what you heard tonight, we've got to spread to our neighborhoods, we really do. We've got to tell them to go online and get that information. I went to vote and my registration card had expired, and I asked myself, how come I didn't get a new one? And I was informed by Bear County that they had run out of paper. So it's a tough life, so you just have to keep, so you just got to keep pressing ahead when you've got any of those challenges. And Joe, I really do appreciate what you're bringing up, because that's a tough one, because you just don't know which way you're supposed to go. So that tracking idea is really a great one. So if anybody's got any questions like that, come over here at the end of the meeting and find out more information.
Can I say one more thing about the voter registration cards?
You certainly may.
Please let your communities know that they don't need that to vote. They just need their voter ID, and they can check their registration at votetexas.gov to make sure that they have a current registration if they're concerned about that. But they do not need that voter registration card to actually vote. They just need their picture ID.
Have that driver's license with you, yeah. Okay, moving right along. Now, this is probably one of the most unique briefings we'll ever get here with the NNA. And I was so pleased to hear that she was able to come. The Vice President for Communications of Texas Biomed, we've got Lisa Cruz with us. Lisa?
Well, thank you all for having me. I am a resident of District 10, and I also happen to serve as the Vice President for Communications at Texas Biomedical Research Institute, which is a research institute in District 6. So it's out off of Loop 410 and 151. We have been actually in San Antonio for over 80 years. So the institute was established in 1941 by a man named Tom Slick Jr. He was a philanthropist and a businessman and a rancher, and he donated the land really for the use of science. He wanted to create a city of science here in San Antonio. And so he did just that. He wanted to do that before he went away to war, and he wasn't sure if he would come back. So he established Texas Biomed, and then when he did come back, he established the Southwest Research Institute, which is our sister institution. So a lot of you may know Southwest Research. They do a lot of the physical sciences, so astronomy. They talk about from deep sea to deep space. We do a lot of the biological sciences. So really our mission, if I can go forward. Oh, sorry, went a little too far. So our mission is to be a leading research institute that is focused on protecting our families from the threats of infectious diseases. And so as I look around the room, see some of us wearing masks, and as we've had to deal with the pandemic over the past 2 years, it's never been more evident that this research is absolutely necessary. And one of the things that makes me so proud about working here is that I'm working with my neighbors to really impact community health that we all know is absolutely essential now. So that is our mission. So what are some of the things that we've done over the 80 years? Our successes in basic research. So we do more than 100 peer-reviewed studies every year as far as producing papers that inform other scientists around the world. In addition, we have really been instrumental in a lot of key vaccines and therapies for diseases that have been plaguing us for years. So hepatitis C, for example, our scientists were responsible for working with Gilead Pharmaceuticals to see that their vaccine, to see that their hepatitis C treatment is now in the hands of people. So 1 pill a day for 12 weeks can actually cure someone from hepatitis C. That wasn't the case 30 years ago, but our scientists are the reason that that is available to folks now. I'm gonna skip ahead to Ebola. So of course, we're all very familiar since 2014 when Ebola actually made its way to the US, why it's important to study that particular disease. Texas Biomed is one of the only places in, we are the only privately owned biosafety level 4 laboratory. What does that mean? A BSL-4 lab is a lab that basically they wear the spacesuits. They're allowed to go in and study the deadliest of diseases, so diseases that don't have vaccines or cures. We can actually say that that's not true anymore for Ebola because of the work being done here in San Antonio by our neighbors and friends. We do now actually have treatment for Ebola that's been rolled out to the Democratic Republic of Congo right now in Africa. And then I'll go back to COVID-19. Obviously, it's been impacting us for several years now, but our scientists worked very, very hard on the vaccines and therapies that we're actually now taking. So we worked with Regeneron, Gilead, Pfizer, Novavax on studying and testing their vaccines and therapeutics before they were allowed to go through to FDA approval and actually be have an impact on us. So, let's see. So, really quickly, who are we? We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are not a corporation. We do get our funding from a variety of different sources. The majority of those sources are NIH funds, so those are grants that are given to us by the National Institutes of Health, by the federal government. That's about 70 to 80% of the funding that we get. About 10 to 15% of funding is philanthropic, so we do have donors who give to us, and then another 10% or so actually comes from corporations. So those partnerships that I talked about with Pfizer, Regeneron, Gilead, those kinds of things is what funds us. We have about 380 plus employees right now. We actually hope to double the size of the Institute in the next 10 years. So we're looking to bring in about 25 new scientists, which would actually bring in about 300 new employees over the next 10 years. Right now we have 72,000 square feet of lab space. Again, we hope to double the amount of lab space and bring those high-paying, good jobs to San Antonio. So what makes us different than, say, UT Health or an independent research institute is that we're combining the different things that make those places unique to make ourselves unique. So we're the only independent nonprofit research laboratory that has 7 biocontainment labs. I talked about the BSL-4, we have one of those. We also have 6 biosafety level 3 labs, also very high safety levels. It's what we need to work with COVID-19, for example. We also operate one of 7 national non-human primate research centers, one of the national primate research centers. There are 6 others around the country. We do have about 2,500 non-human primates on our campus that really help inform us, and we're able to work with them to really help understand causes of disease, how disease really runs their course, and then it also allows us to test our therapies and vaccines. And then, of course, decades of experience, as I've talked about, we've been able to really push therapies and vaccines through to FDA approval and ultimately to the market. And I talked about a little bit of the history of success that we've had. I wanted to share with you just one example from COVID-19 of why the people and the work that we're doing in San Antonio are so important. So back in March of 2020, when we were all still trying to figure out what was going on, what exactly this disease was, our scientists put their heads together and tried to figure out, well, what role do we have to play in this? How are we important in this? And really the animal work is what differentiates us. Our scientists really know how to establish animal models for disease so that these companies could test their vaccines and therapeutics. So we raised $5 million within a matter of a week. After that, we started the studies. By the end of March, we had the animal studies complete and the papers written by May. Pfizer started working with us in June, and then by December, we had the Pfizer vaccine approved. So they were able to move into their clinical trials basically between the time of June and September, October, we were able to get through to those clinical trials, those phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials that you hear about in people. You can't move to those phases until you've done some animal work. So we were able to help move that on. We now have about 35 book contracts, but about over 40 studies still going on in COVID-19. So for example, we have a scientist working with Aridis Pharmaceuticals on a therapy. It's not a vaccine, it's actually a therapeutic. We've licensed it to Aridis Pharmaceuticals and they're still doing the animal testing right now. Hopefully we'll be able to move that pharmaceutical treatment through. And what we found that it's working on the Omicron variant, it's working on various other coronaviruses as well, not just COVID-19. So, what is the vision for the Institute? We really do want to lead the nation in infectious disease research. It's really unique in the country. We're really unique, obviously, in the state and for the city, and we have the expertise right here in San Antonio to do this. So that's really what we're hoping for. We also, of course, want to be a best place to work. I talked about the vision for doubling the size of the Institute. We have the technology, we have the expertise, and of course people want to come to San Antonio, so we actually are able to recruit some really top-notch, high-quality scientists. So over the next 10 years, we hope to raise $250 million in order to see that strategic plan, that doubling of the size of the Institute happen. When that happens, I'm not going to read this slide sheet because there's a lot of information, but when that happens, it actually is expected to be about a $3.2 billion economic impact to the city of San Antonio. Between the high-paying jobs, between the building work that we're doing, and of course, all of the outreach that we're hoping to increase. Our outreach and education efforts reach about 10,000 students every year, and we're hoping to double that and reach hopefully 20 to 25,000 students with our STEM education programs. So, as I mentioned, we have high-paying jobs. The average annual wage at Texas Biomed is about $100,000 with benefits. So these are good-paying jobs. People stick around with Texas Biomed for quite some time. I've been there about 7.5 years. Really do love working with the amazing, really talented, exceptional people that work there. So with that, I will take any questions. I'm sorry I ran through that really fast.
No, you did a good job, Lisa. Let's give her a hand. Anybody want to monkey around with any questions? Go ahead.
I'm just curious, are you over there off of 410 where the Southwest Research is, or somewhere else in town?
Yeah, no, we're actually in that. We're right across from them on Military.
Anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
Are your scientists applying for their own like NIH grants, or are these outside scientists contracting with you once they have funding?
So, I'm sorry, it's both. So the question was whether or not our scientists are applying for their own funding or they're contracting with other scientists. The majority of our funding is our own funding. So our scientists are gaining, we have about $200 million in 5-year grants. Any given year, it's about $30 to $40 million in NIH funding that our scientists secure, but then we do get other scientists coming to us to partner, and that does bring in additional revenue as well.
So you have your own animal care and use committee, like at your...
We do, yes. So we have our own institutional animal care and use committee, which is a committee that's made up of scientists, veterinarians, lay people. So I actually serve on our IACUC as a non-scientist. So please don't ask me any scientific questions. But I do serve on the IACUC, and the IACUC is really meant to look specifically at the welfare of the animals that are on study to ensure that they're being well taken care of, that we're using the fewest number of animals that we possibly can. Our job is really to look after the welfare of the animals that are on campus. So,
Thank you very much. Good question. Let's give her a hand, everybody. Okay, I think you're probably familiar with our next speaker. He's been around here a while. Let's everybody give a big hand to Councilman Clayton Perry.
Thank you. Howdy. I love it. Howdy. That's great. And look at this room. Isn't this great to see people showing up to this meeting? This is fantastic. And you get it right from the horse's mouth. From me, oh, that's Councilman Gallagher. No, from myself. And we really enjoy this personal interaction that we get to do here. And I'll be here afterwards to answer any other your questions that we don't get to today. But let me just go through a few things coming up and what's been happening. Already talked about the early voting going on, and I'm sure District 10 is going to come out right on top, just as usual, on the number of votes that actually get out in this city for these elections. So I'm looking forward to seeing those numbers come out. In May, we're going to have another election. Anybody guess what this election in May is going to be?
City Council.
The bond. All right. I have been fighting as much as I can, along with, we've had a lot of volunteers that actually got on these citizen committees that put our requirements together for the bond. Is there anybody here that participated? There we go. And yes, we got some people. If you got any specific questions, go see them about how they did the committee's business. But no, they did a fantastic job. In District 10, we got a lot of projects that really got funded, and they're really needed through this bond process. Now, having said that, you need to go and take a look at each one of those categories. There's 6 categories. Let me go through them. There's streets and sidewalks, there's drainage, there's parks, there's housing, public safety facilities, and library and cultural facilities. Those are the 6 areas. I really encourage you to go onto the city website and look up, you can find where the bond is and look up what those individual projects are so that you can vote either for or against either one of these. These are all going to be individual items on the ballot. Hopefully the wording's already been set. I haven't seen the wording, but hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory whether you want this portion of the bond or you don't want this portion of the bond. Sometimes I'm disappointed in how they word these items, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from that. I'm going to be asking the city attorney, I want to see the bond language, what's actually coming out. And if I don't agree with it, I'll certainly make sure people understand how they're voting yes or no on these things. But take a look at the individual projects that are listed under each one of these parts to see if you want to support that or not. Because this bond is $1.2 billion. That's with a B. Last time it was $850 million in 2017. This is up to $1.2 billion. Now, I had a lady come up to me the other day saying, oh, what's the big deal, Councilman? Why don't you like this part of the bond and that part of the bond? Isn't that free money? Doesn't the city get that money for free? A lady actually asked me that. I said, no, that's not free money. That's where we offer bonds and you get that money from investors, and then you have to pay that money back to those investors plus interest. So it never ceases to amaze me how people don't understand our system and what they vote for or against. So just go through that and make sure you agree with it or disagree with it. I put some articles out there. I hope y'all were able to see those on my thoughts about this bond and where we need to place more emphasis. We'll leave it at that. I'm not supposed to persuade people to vote for it or against it. Something about ethics or something like that. But anyway, that's as far as I'll go. But y'all know where I stand on a lot of these money issues. Something else coming up big, redistricting. Anybody want to take a wild guess how that's going? Well, I got 2 representatives that are representing District 10, and one is Councilman Clamp right here, and the other one is Councilman Souls. So those 2 have been going to the meetings and getting our input into the system, how we want to look like at the end of the redistricting. And let me tell you, there's some poaching and giving away back and forth, and we got a long way to go with that, but hopefully later on this year. When is this all supposed to be finished, John?
May, sometime May or June.
In May or June, and maybe we can get a sneak peek of this at one of these meetings before that goes final. But right now, it's still pretty preliminary, and they're working very hard on keeping the numbers straight and making sure that we meet the law, because this is actually legislated how you're supposed to split up the city. So hopefully we'll get everything straight and have as many people there's going to be some unhappy people, I can tell you that already. My direction to John and Carlton was, I want to keep District 10 the way it is. But we got to look at reality too. It might not be exactly what we're showing today. So their charge is to keep it as close as possible or exactly the way we are today. And if they don't, then y'all can blame them.
Carlton's number is...
There's actually going to be a couple of meetings here in District 10 if you want to attend. Let's see, on April 23rd, right here in the Tool Yard at 10 o'clock, there's a meeting. Their committee is actually going to meet here, so you can come in, sit in, and listen to it, and have input if you want. The same thing on May 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Senior Center. So both of those meetings are available if you want to attend and get your comments into the committees. That would be great. Road shows. Does anybody know about the road shows, the District 10 road shows? Some of you have been at those. Our books are open. If you want us to come in and bring in any city organization or county organization or ACOG, we will be happy to put that all together and bring that to you in your community. And guess what? We even feed you too. So that's one way to get people into these meetings. I know with food and look at all those cookies and all goodies back there. So that's Joe. Thank you all very much for working that again. Yes. Let's see. So get in touch with the staff. They can work with you on a date, and we'll get you set up. Annual budget process. Normally we don't start that until June. This year we're moving it up to April. And one of the things that I'm really encouraged about, we had a small discussion about what Rich was talking earlier about homestead exemptions. I fought for that, to get that enacted. The very first time San Antonio, the city, gave a homestead exemption. Now I want to raise that homestead exemption. Every year we have leftover money, and I keep showing how much our property taxes are raising every year. I said, why can't we afford to give something back to our homeowners here in San Antonio? And again, just that short discussion, people started saying, well, we don't want to give away that money. We got other things to do with that property tax. Man, start getting on your phone, sending emails, text messages, whatever, to the mayor and those other council folks, all 10 of them. You know where I stand. I want to hire a homestead exemption. Don't have to write to me. Unless you don't want that, then let me know. But my goodness, we have so many resources here in town to get at, to fund an additional homestead exemption. We should do it. We're the lowest city in Texas providing a homestead exemption. And that was only recently also. So get with Rich and his organization to make sure you're getting it, and then help me fight for a higher homestead exemption. All right, so we're starting that budget process in April, and we'll be done with that in September again for this next fiscal year. I can't believe it's budget time already again, but we're gonna work on it really hard. Upcoming events. Does anybody enjoy our Fiesta events? Yeah, all right, there we go. Let me tell you, Landry in the back, she works really hard on putting on our Fiesta, and we're hoping to do that again this year. It's March 22nd at the field office. You know, there's food and drinks and a lot of medals being given away, and I got a really good one again this year. Has anybody seen my past medals? They're all pretty cool. I'm gonna have another cool one this year, so that's all I'm gonna say about it. But y'all come to the Fiesta event, again, March 22nd, 5:30 at the field office there. It's the Catholic Life Building right there on 410 and Harry Wurzbach. Just come across and come join the fun. We got entertainment and we have a good time out there. And other than that, sir, I'm sure you were going to do that, but I want to go ahead and give a big hand to the officers in the back of the room. Great SAPD and SAFE officers, and Captain Smith. Just real quick, the D10 meeting next month, the third, is it third Monday? Yep, it's the third Monday. We're going to have WellMed here. A lot of y'all probably need to hear about what WellMed is offering nowadays. We got the SAFE officers are going to be here to talk to us also. And Dr. Micah from the Northeast Independent School District is going to be here. That's going to be very interesting on how they're coping with the pandemic and also how they're spending their money. I'd like to hear that. And then we might have the TxDOT director here, Gina Gallegos. She's relatively new. Come in and tell us a little bit about, y'all know there's some more construction coming on 1604 and 35. All at the same time. So we're going to kind of be hemmed in here in District 10, but she'll be able to give us what they're going to be doing, how they're going to do it, and when they're going to be complete with it. So any questions for me?
Any questions for the councilman?
Just one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
The dates that you gave for the meetings about the changes for District 10, could you make sure those come out in your newsletter
Oh, yeah.
so that
Yep.
we'll get those?
Landry's got it back there. She's giving a thumbs up. And we'll advertise that as much as we can on newsletter, Facebook, and all those other
Okay, thank
media
you.
things,
Thank you.
which I don't even know how to get to them. But anyway, we'll have it out there. All right, sir, that's all for me.
Very good.
Thank you.
Let's give him a hand, everybody. No, I think we should all should give a shout out to our SAPD, the personnel who are here tonight. Thank you very much. I know the real reasons because Bud Little is here and we heard there could have been troubles. I'm glad it worked out okay. Thank you for behaving yourself tonight, Bud.
It's still young.
Oh, okay. Well, we've got a Zoom to get out of here by exactly 8 o'clock because they'll close the gate and I know nobody wants to stay in the tool yard overnight. All right, the one thing I'd like to just mention, I think that's really important for all of us, and that is we've got to have our 2022 goals for each one of our associations. And you should be talking to your boards about that right now. And you know, at the top of the list has to be, especially for the voluntary associations, to get people involved. And how do we do that? You know, what are the sort of things? And without question, at the top of the list is communications. We have to think about what is the best way to get the word out about why do we have an association, what is it doing, how is it protecting our neighborhood, and so forth. So really be working on that. Talk to your boards and talk about the unique things you can do. You know, one of the best ones, of course, is knocking out a newsletter. You can do that, you know, on your website. You can do that on paper, like I wish we could all do, but I know that's getting really expensive nowadays, but that's something that definitely we should have going out to everybody. And another one, of course, in helping me with, I know in my association, is Jan Kirby there with Constant Contact. And we do the same thing with the Alliance, where you can actually blast out an email to everybody in the neighborhood that gets signed up. And it's something that can be very effective. And if you're going to have any kind of special programs, if you're having garage sales or cleanup days, or whatever it happens to be, those Constant Contact, those email blasts are a good way to make sure people learn about that sort of thing. And I'll tell you, with all the last minute changes we've had, you know how we've had to postpone meetings or change meeting dates and things like that, we've got to figure out our best ways to communicate with everybody. One of them that was a growing lesson for me was I've got some young next door neighbors, and I said to them, have you paid your annual dues yet? You got to send us a check. And the young man looked at me and he said, a check? I don't write checks. And we figured out a thing called PayPal. Have you heard of that? Yeah, you've got to start using things like that because we've got younger generations that could care less about writing checks. So be thinking about that too as well. So get your name out there, get the reason why we have our associations, and let's make that our 2022 goals. And now, speaking of 2022 goals, I know all of you want to know who's won the door prizes. So, Jan, if you can bring those up, and Councilman Clamp, if you could help distribute the prizes.
I thought you were gonna let me say something.
Oh yeah, that's right. You heard Bud Little. Go ahead, Bud.
Do I have to prompt you on everything?
Yes. Stand up.
I'm hurt. I am hurt. I
Talk
lost
loud.
2 inches of my height. Anyway, seriously. I'm glad to see Captain Smith and his crew back here. Beck and I started something a couple of years ago. We were taking donuts, of all things. Donuts to the substation. Well, the pandemic started. We got to thinking, that's open food. So we got into a routine of going to Costco and Sam's and buying things in bulk. Crackers, cookies, you name it, we buy it. We chuck in half of the amount of money for them. The neighborhood, my neighborhood chucks in the other half. And we get this together, and about every other month, we take about $150 worth of goodies to the substation. Lord, I've ridden with these people. I know what they put up with. This is our way of saying thank you. Get your neighborhoods together. Even if you just take 1 or 2 boxes of stuff, at least it's showing you care. Something we don't do very much in this day and age. So please, we're not the greatest in the world. I'm sure this is not unique, but I'll tell you, it warms the heart. Makes you feel good when these people come out and they have to struggle to get the boxes of stuff back into the station. Especially Sergeant Kelly.
Okay, very good, Bud. Thank you. So Bud will be here for the next couple of minutes, so if you've got any questions, you can come up and talk to him about it.
I'll have you talk to Faye.
Yeah. Okay, Councilman, who is the first winner? Let's have a number. For this beautiful bottle of wine. I hope it gets to you before Councilman Clam puts it in his pocket. The number is, I'm going to read the last 3 numbers. 0, 1, 7.
Oh, you're kidding.
Ta-da, we have a winner.
No.
Okay. Second one. Oh, wow. Okay, what do we have there? It's a slow cooker. We all know about slow cooking. Are you ready? 0, 3, 6.
Oh.
Ta-da!
He's the one who came in and said he didn't think he was gonna win.
That's right.
Okay, we've got some beautiful bags of surprises. The first one goes to, 007. 007. Is 007 here tonight? Way in the back. All right. Okay, we have one more to go and we'll be adjourned.
Looks like some wine and hot cocoa. All right.
Yeah, this one came from Kendra. Okay, the winner is for the final surprise. 0, 4, 0. Ta-da!
Man, it's only on this side of the room.
It's a conspiracy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you write it down. March 21st, we'll all be here for the District 10 meeting, and for all those other meetings, we'll make sure you've got plenty of information about them coming out. Thanks for coming tonight, everybody. And don't forget your cookies.
I'm Barbara.